Right before recording, came through on the newswire that Julio Jones has been signed by the Philadelphia Eagles. He is well past his prime. For the most part, my expectation would be that if he does have a big week or two, he'll be on your bench anyways. You won't have seen it coming. So take that for what it is. I'm not trying to get him on my team too hard, that is, for sure. Now, before we get into the rankings, let's just quick recap how I did last week with my Love'ems, my Fade'ems, as well as a couple of DFS buys that I gave for you. You can stick around for the end of the video for my DFS buys, and you'll get my Love'em and my Fade'em as I go through the rankings. First of all, how did I do for my DFS buys? For my not dirt cheap option, I gave you Matt Stafford, just kind of a normally priced quarterback at $6,100. He was at home against the Carolina Cardinals, not Carolina. And I ultimately, it was a disappointing performance from him. That did not work out. And in the bargain bin, a little bit cheaper at $5,600, I gave you Brock Purdy. He was going up against Cleveland. I just figured it was worth a shot given how he did against Dallas a week earlier for that price for Brock Purdy. It did not work out, but Brock Purdy was also a Fade'em of mine, and he finished at the quarterback 25 in normal scoring formats. So I nailed it there, and for my Love'em, I also nailed it. I had Dak Prescott in at my quarterback 1. Let's get on to the Week 7 quarterback rankings. Welcome in to the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve. That was annoying me that one of them was bold and one was not. So you can see this is an expected range that we expect the quarterback to score within, given the matchup, given how they've done so far this season, instead of just a single projected number. Just gives you a little bit of a bigger range, a more accurate range to expect guys to score within. And over to the left of the names, you will also see my player temperature gauge. This is largely due to the matchup and if it's favorable or not favorable towards these players having a good game. I've also added in their PFF grades in order to kind of offset the fact that, great quarterbacks, sometimes the matchup doesn't matter so much. And so that's kind of competing in there. And that just gives you a good idea of how good of a play they are or are not this week. And all of these colors, red is good, blue is bad. Just think of it like, how you want to take a shower usually. Let's go on to my first tier of quarterback rankings. These are your must-start quarterbacks, starting off with Jalen Hurts, followed by Patrick Mahomes, Tua Tagovailoa, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Brock Purdy, and Lamar Jackson. And I do just want to give you a little bit of insight into sometimes how these rankings will work for me, so we don't need to totally cover these guys. But I have Patrick Mahomes in at quarterback 2, and he has a very, very lovely matchup going up against the Los Angeles Chargers. Due to his matchup, his floor is absolutely fantastic. As you can see, he has the highest expected low end. These are not floors and ceilings. I do actually have floors and ceilings up on the website, where you can also see my rankings all week as I update them. www.theffforge.com. Link is down in the description. It's right above me as well. So you can check those out there. You can always also check them out live with me on Sunday for my final rankings, 1 hour prior to kickoff for the main slate of games. And as long as there is an early set of games in London or wherever overseas, I also show up about a half hour to 45 minutes prior to that set of games for any start-sit questions. So back to Patrick Mahomes, really high floor due to the matchup, but due to his playmakers and their inability to really help him this season, his ceiling is not so great. Even in this matchup, they've just been rushing the ball more, etc. And so that's why he is my quarterback 2, despite having an absolutely amazing opportunity. I expected him to be my QB1, but then you put Jalen Hurts in and also equally or more amazing opportunity going up against Miami, and that's also very exciting. Then we will look at Tua Tagovailoa. As we know, projections don't know everything. The ceiling or the higher end of this expected range for Tua this week feels similarly low to Patrick Mahomes. I expect Patrick to go over 20 fantasy points this week, just as I expect Tua to go over 21 fantasy points this week. And in the case of Tua, I think that it's as simple as the fact that this offense hasn't really had to cook. They have not been challenged by other teams' offenses. This week, they're going up against Philadelphia, and this is an offense that, as you can see from that higher end expected range from Jalen Hurts, has a chance to actually really challenge them and force this offense to be flying off on all cylinders. And when you compare to why I have him higher than like Josh Allen here, well, Josh Allen is going up against the New England Patriots. Really don't expect that team to force them to be in a passing attack all game, have to score 38 points in order to win, etc. I like the upside of a Tua more there. And then when you compare that to Justin Herbert, Kansas City's defense is really good, despite the fact that he has been an absolute dynamite fantasy quarterback so far this season. Let's move on to the second tier, but just giving a little insight into some of the things that I'm thinking about when I'm putting one guy above the other here. Here's where we will talk about the contenders here. And at quarterback 8, I have Jordan Love. It's tough to trust Jordan Love. Despite producing in fantasy football, he really has not looked too great in real life football. Still, he's going up against the Denver Broncos defense this week. He's coming off of a bye, and he should have his full set of weapons, hopefully at full health, for the first time in the entirety of this season. So I am reluctantly going to be giving Jordan Love a love him, and that is in part because I really don't like a whole lot about the quarterbacks this year, and I don't like to take layups at my love-ems and my fade-ems. By the way, quarterback 6 was Brock Purdy, quarterback 7, Lamar Jackson up there. Moving on to Geno Smith at quarterback 9. He is my EV quarterback 23. That is equalized value. That is a system that I use that's quite similar to the average fantasy points scored per week kind of measurement, except it does take into factors in consistency of the players is the big difference. So quarterback 23 on the season, but my projections this week do indicate that he is either underperformed and or this matchup is so good that we're expecting a little bit of a better performance from him, though the projections still aren't great because he has performed so poorly so far on the season. This is a top 5 matchup for quarterbacks in the Arizona Cardinals, looking for this offense to look the best that it has all season against them. Then at quarterback 10, we have Jared Goff, who has been spectacular this season, but he finds himself in the worst matchup for quarterbacks as far as fantasy points allowed per game in the Baltimore Ravens. Jared Goff is a guy who absolutely thrives when he has his best weapons all around him. When you start to take those away, he is a guy who can struggle. The impact of losing David Montgomery, to me, in this matchup might end up being absolutely devastating for them. Goff has been one of the best quarterbacks so far this season. My projections would argue that he is either overproduced compared to his EV quarterback 6 ranking so far in the season, or that the matchup is holding him down this week. And probably a little bit of both, because I do think that he has overproduced. For instance, the game where he had like 4 passing touchdowns, even though didn't have a whole lot of passing yards or anything. They were running the ball really, really well in that game. It just so happened that he, passed for the touchdowns that he did in that game. Anyways, I think that there's a high chance for Jared Goff to bust this week, so I am fading him. He's still a top 10 quarterback for me, even though I am quite afraid of the bust. It's just, I have him below Jordan Love and Geno Smith. Like, that's really hard to justify already. Going to be tough to put him any lower. Then we have Matt Stafford in at quarterback 11, and Pittsburgh isn't a great quarterback matchup. They're about an average matchup who they're going up against. I would like to see Stafford have had a multi-touchdown game over the past 2 weeks since Cooper Kupp came back. He's been missing some big-time throws. I ended up siding with the projections here, however, in the fact that I put him up ahead of Trevor Lawrence at the last moment. And Trevor Lawrence is going up against a very, very tough matchup, not quite as bad as the Baltimore matchup is for Jared Goff, but pretty darn close to as bad as that. And so in his instance, having him lower than initially I had him just right behind Jared Goff, I just went with the quarterback who's been better on the season, even though it's a slightly worse matchup. And then, of course, ended up smashing Matt Stafford right in between those two. And that's how you get those 3 in that order. Russell Wilson I have in at quarterback 13. As you can see, the projections like him more than where I have him ranked. Right ahead of these 4 guys, at least, that I have ranked ahead of him. Green Bay is not a great matchup for quarterbacks, but I still think that this Broncos offense will be able to find enough success against a defense that's not necessarily spectacular either. That should help Russell Wilson to have another fine fantasy performance. They should be able to get the ground game going all right. I just think that they'll be fine. Why do I have Sam Howell over Kirk Cousins? Why do I have Kirk Cousins so low? Well, Sam Howell, basically I agree with the projections as far as his floor is concerned there. You can see quite a high Once again, maybe not technically a floor, but quite a high lower end of his expected range. That's because of the matchup. Going up against the New York Giants hasn't been a very tough matchup. However, teams have usually been able to run on them quite a bit and not had to pass on them or score a bunch of points in order to beat them on offense. And so that's where you see that ceiling does suffer a little ways for Sam Howell. When it comes to Kirk Cousins, I was not inspired by the Justin Jefferson-less Vikings offense up against a very poor Bears defense. Maybe that was just an interdivisional thing, but I'm not really betting on it. That was the Bears defense, and this is the first week we saw them without Justin Jefferson. Now we're going to see them going up against San Francisco. Not too optimistic about things turning around for that offense this week. Brings us to the third tier of quarterbacks. Not going to go over these guys so much, but at quarterbacks 16 and 17, I have Deshaun Watson, Joshua Dobbs. We don't know for sure if Deshaun Watson will play, but I really want to point these two out because if you look at their projections too, they kind of stand out in this tier as guys who could be ranked higher according to the projections. They do project well, and they just barely made it into this tier. But we start this tier off strong, and I still don't mind playing Derek Carr, Baker Mayfield, Desmond Ridder, Daniel Jones, Brian Hoyer in that order this week. Brian Hoyer, obviously now we start to get into questionable territory for sure. In a week where you might be scrambling to get a quarterback, like there's opportunities here. Who's gonna be successful? I don't know, but this is the order that I would bet on it in. And then Kenny Pickett in at quarterback 23, and he barely makes it into this tier, but just think they've had the bye week to self-scout. Maybe they get Deontay Johnson back, though that's not looking too promising. They are going to get Pat Freiermuth back in at tight end, so that should help a little bit. Going up against the Los Angeles Rams, not an entirely scary defense. You can drive on them. Maybe there's a chance there, and we look at the quarterbacks that I have in the final tier behind them, and I just couldn't quite keep them in this tier. We have Tyson Bagent, I don't know, for Chicago going up against Las Vegas, so there is your hope there if you're having to play him. He is going up against Las Vegas, Mac Jones, and then Gardner Minshew, unfortunately, going up against Cleveland. Not a good matchup. That could be a very garbage game for Gardner. That is it for the rankings. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Once again, I do highly advise checking back in on Sunday at the very least if you have made any decisions based on my rankings, because there's a decent chance that things will change, or you can always check in on Friday. Saturday is really where I go through and do some of the bigger changes to the rankings if there are any that are needed. Now let's look at my DFS buys for week 7, and I'm thinking it's worth spending $7,700 on Tua Tagovailoa because I have him ranked 3rd and he is the 5th most expensive guy, so I see a little bit of value there in a week where I really don't like a lot of the quarterbacks. Down in the bargain bin, maybe not quite all the way into the bargain bin, but at a cheaper price at $5,500. Brock Purdy, I have him ranked 6th on the week and he is quite inexpensive, so that looks like a good value to me. Thank you very much. I will have wide receivers, running backs, and tight ends videos coming out throughout the week. Tight ends videos come out after the Thursday night game on Friday morning. That's it. Thank you very much. Keep tuned in for those videos. Bye-bye. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Always appreciated. Bye.